Hi, Kalpun Piso here. We know God doesn't exist. We're in the 21st century. But how was God created, the concept of God? Well, it started like 5,000 years ago in Egypt. The Egyptians created God and the supernatural and all that, which eventually would give rise to all different religions, including the so-called Abrahamic religions with all the fairy tales of Moses and Solomon and all that stuff. The Jews never had an empire. It never happened. But interestingly, these priests in Egypt, they had temples, and the temples were stages for magic. And they controlled the mass of the ignorant people with magic. It happened much later during Alexander the Great's empire. Alexander was a god. And Alexandria, his town, was temples and everything, and it was great. And the Greeks were so intellectual, and they devised all kind of things, and the priests used those devices that the Egyptians had used before, but of course these were more modern, into deceiving the people. There were no synagogues. Judaism, as we know it today, did not exist. It was all the religion of the Greeks, Hellenism, and which eventually, 280 years BCE, Ptolemy Philadelphus, which was created, he translated the Septuagint and created all these different fairy tales, which is actually the Jews have today. But then came the Roman Empire, which copied everything from the Greeks, developed the religion, which would eventually come into, from the cult of Julius Caesar, becomes Christianity, and the rest of fairy tales that we see today, and Islam. So all come from the Egyptian Book of the Dead.
Beginning to understand the complex engineering systems Heron used.
One really good example of Heron of Alexandria's work is the horse with a knife in its throat drinking while it's watched by a cherub-type being.
It was one of the most famous and celebrated machines and was known as number 78. It was an altar piece used by the priests to show the worshippers that the gods were present.
It is so complicated that it's baffled
Priests were in control. Everybody went to temples. There were no such a thing as synagogues or churches in 2,300 years ago in Alexandria. No, just temples, and people flocked to their temples, and the priests raked their brains, the ignorant brains, like they do today.
But basically, as the knife cut through the head of the horse, it interlocked with a series of cogs and gears. You have to imagine the actual head being
all the Roman emperors. The Roman emperor was son of God and also head priest. All over, there were kings, and they were all priests, like Herod, for instance, in control of dogma. They fool everyone. Those idiot, retarded, religious folks follow because they were so ignorant. They do that.
Two parts of the pipe back together again.
The horse would also appear to magically drink from the priest's hand.
The cherub looks at the horse angrily and it does nothing. And then when the cherub is turned around by a person, the horse begins to drink. Underneath the cherub there's a long tube, and that long tube has a hole in it. And there's another tube on top of that. So when you turn the cherub around, it exposes the hole, and water pours the hole. And water
this is only one example. Now imagine taking all the sacraments, all the people over there giving the money to the priest and all that, and then eating all these mushrooms, these psychedelic mushrooms, all entheogens. Everyone, including the so-called Abrahamic Jews, which actually they were a mix of all the people, and they also believe in that nonsense. They were, the Semitic tribes. They had not a civilization of their own, but they were fool like everybody else was, for more intelligent intellectuals like the Greek scientists.
And it looks as if it's drinking.
Heron's machine would be placed on the altar by the priest. By using its complex technology, the automated machine would create a powerful and awe-inspiring that they had performed the impossible.
We shouldn't really be surprised at the presence of magic or technical trickery within religious contexts. These temples are powerful and wealthy institutions. The priests wish to maintain their position, and anything that will maintain or preferably enhance their position is something they'll go for.
Telling fortunes by examining animal entrails was just one of the techniques priests used to keep their congregation enthralled.
We know that all the, from the Greek religion, the Sibylline oracles came over to Rome, and Rome copied everything and started having everything, and all the different type of religions using the same tricks to gain converts. And the Son of God, Roman emperors, you know, since the father Julius Caesar, they were Epicureans. In other words, the atheists. They're intelligent. We have to, you know, you have to keep the ignorant people.
Often showed amazing scientific and technical virtuosity, but secrets of such techniques were jealously guarded.
Inside an ordinary temple, you have a separate area, the sanctuary. This is only visible to the worshippers through a single doorway. They're looking into a darkened inner sanctum. That inner sanctum is the perfect space for creating.
And you know why we know this? Brains, research, archaeology, not reading one stupid, ridiculous book like a Talmud, the Jewish text, the stupid Abrahamic Bibles, and all the rest of the deluded books. And people have been conned, and I love it they get conned, because they're ignorant. And there's no such a thing as God. And there's no such a thing as
Temples are deliberately kept dark. Temples are there to enhance the sense of mystery because it makes you easier to persuade. It makes the message easier to get across to you.
In the 1st century of the Common Era, building on the early works of Ctesibius and Philon, Heron wrote a large number of works on mechanics and mathematics. He was equally at home designing mechanisms for solving practical problems.
Yeah, the retarded Christian has been fooled for over 2,000 years.
Pieces for the temple, he would definitely be looking for things which were magical and mysterious, and that would affect people in a spiritual kind of way.
Come on, give me the money.
One of his famous devices was a beautiful representation of an archer and a dragon. But this amazing device was no ordinary altarpiece. Through advanced hydraulic technology, Heron created an archer that could shoot arrows at a dragon just as the dragon emitted the
Thanks to the mathematicians and the great engineers, Greek engineers, the Library of Alexandria, great volume, which the Christians burned, by the way, because the retarded Christians, you know, they introduced the Dark Ages.
This is one of probably the most famous.
We're just finding this out.
Heron of Alexandria.
Archaeology.
Medieval writers that have translated his treatise seem to have had a fascination with this particular piece. An arrow that the dragon laid on to kill him so he can claim the golden apples of the Hesperides.
They are the drugs, the mushrooms, the apples of Apollo, the apples of the Hesperides, which here you can see Commodus holding 3 in his hand. Is it the Capitoline Museum? The Son of God, Commodus, 180 CE. You want some apples? Here it is. You'll see God. The same apple given to Eve by Penis a snake. On the retarded fairy tales of the Bible and Jewish Talmud. Apples of Apollo.
This is the internal mechanism of the archer piece. The pneumatic section consists of 2 vessels.
It was certainly no accident that Heron found a ready market for his inventions in Alexandria.
Exactly.
Ever since it was founded by Alexander the Great, Alexandria was a cosmopolitan city, a melting pot of the Eastern Mediterranean.
Alexandria was East meets West.
That's where Judaism,
ancient traditions of Egypt,
eventually Christianity and all that, got all the developing those ideas.
Mathematicians, scientists, engineers, academics in all fields were able to feed off that able to exist in the temples of Egypt.
Yes, the Septuagint, the books of Moses.
Considered as being an Egyptian city. Because Egyptians,
translator over there,
like
written
the Mediterranean
by Greek Epicurean Ptolemy, Philadelphus.
Alexandria was a Greek foundation, and the Greek, they were a people of sailors. They needed the Mediterranean for their trading. So many cultures, of many religions, of many different people that tried to live together.
And the traders were the smart Jews, which adopted all the ideas and the customs from the Greek religion.
Life was a comparative rat race, where the ultimate prize, a packed temple full of eager worshippers, going to those with the most awe-inspiring gadgetry.
If you look at the sort of religions in Alexandria, got a mixture of the secretive mystery religions, such as Isis, alongside more state religions.
There was zero Judaism or Christianity in that city of intellectuals. None.